Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bad Luck Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about Shadowrun 5th Edition and some helpful hints on what you need to do as both a player and a GM, or from those two perspectives, when it comes to starting your first game overall. Now, some caveats I want to kind of give out before starting this whole thing. I do not know that much about Shadowrun. I've been learning about it all this month, but obviously my knowledge is not going to be as, deep as people who have been doing it for a very long time. Years, months, anything more than what I've done so far, you can expect at least a little something different. I don't even have a good grasp, I would say, on the general design principles of the game or its overall, methods. But what I do have is a wealth of experience playing tabletop games, and I would say a really good mind for kind of laying it out for new players, as I've done a lot of content where I'm introducing new players to new games all the time. So this is the kind of point of view of you just got the book, you want to play with your friends, or you're just about to go start, with a fresh group. This is kind of what you want to know. Now, everything here is subject to change based on your own personal experience and what the GM might have to offer for you, as well as your own play style. But overall, these are just some general tips that I've gained from picking it up. And I think there's a lot in this video that I think is going to be handy for everyone. So let's go ahead and get started with the player side of things, which is character creation. Now, Shadowrun 5th Edition is a little bit crunchier of a system than you might be used to. There's a lot to learn, and my biggest recommendation before we even get started is just figure out what you want to do. Don't be worried about optimization. Optimization can come after you start playing. Once you get a feel for the game, build a solid intuition. But one of the big things that you really want to do is research the things once you have a good character idea set. So when it comes to designing characters, just remember that the premise of Shadowrun is that you are doing, illegal actions oftentimes against major corporations. So you're not necessarily playing evil or bad characters. You're playing Robin Hood-esque characters, only less not entrepreneurial, but whatever. You're not giving your money away. You're working to earn your dollar. You're just not targeting the small man. You're targeting the bigger people with a lot of money, or the like. You're a criminal, but kind of in a world where it's honestly morally not that big a deal. Once you can get your head wrapped around that, you got to understand what position you want to play when it comes to your team. Now, depending on the size of the party, your group might need a little bit more or less of certain skill sets. If you're playing with a smaller group, you're going to want skill sets that are a little bit more combat capable. So if you do come into combat, you're able to handle yourself. And not only that, but you want skills mixed in. So you kind of want to do like half combat, half skill-based characters. But if your party is larger, everyone can take slightly more individualized roles, which will overall increase the success of the party because everyone's able to focus more on their jobs. They can put more points, more efforts into it. So when you're talking about Shadowrun specifically, there's about 4 main jobs that are specific to the system, and then there's a few others that are a bit more casual. So the first and foremost is spellcasters. Spellcasters are going to be using the magic and resonance features. Well, magic features. There's also what's called a technomancer that uses resonance. We'll get into that in a little bit. But those kind of characters are focused on using their utility to do a bunch of things that maybe some other characters can do, whether it's, walking through walls, whether it's being able to astral project and move into buildings, whether it's being able to walk through like a metal detector with no gear on, but still be able to hack. That's kind of what technomancers are for. You can range in how offensive you run. Technomancers are a lot more offensive when it comes to VR space and augmented reality stuff, and magic can be more offensive when it comes to the meat space, they call it in the game, or the physical realm. But both of them have very solid amounts of what they can do utility and offensively. The next type is the rigger. The rigger is an individual who sets up the getaway vehicle. They have drones. They're one of the primary like utility characters that don't deal with hacking. Hacking is left to deckers. Deckers use a deck to hack technology, and they're very skill-based classes that are very much orientated towards getting into, high tech spaces, high security walls, get downloading information. Honestly, when it comes to Shadowrun, you want some character capable of dealing with tech. It's just unavoidable. There's so much in the game that's designed around tech and VR space and augmented reality and all that kind of stuff. You want a tech-based character, whether that's a technomancer, a rigger, or a decker. You're going to want someone in these realms for, whatever your venture is. And rigger and decker I would count as two different jobs, because the rigger is the vehicle, gear, equipment based character, while the decker is the hacker based character, not necessarily so worried about the actual hardware. The last character type is going to be the street samurai or your standard gunner, whatever your method of dealing damage is. You're going to want a character who can kick some major butt, because things will inevitably go south, and it's just up to you to kind of help the team out. Now, all characters should have some points invested in some weapon skills, but it's your job as the street samurai to go in and deal with the major hitters and to overall help protect your team. You're a character who's going to be using a lot more of the augments. It doesn't matter if you're standing out, you're the murder machine. The group calls on you when things go bad. So, with these kind of 4 general styles in mind, don't forget the standard tabletop kind of design for how to get through things. A face-based character who has good charisma skills is always nice. Now, I wouldn't call it its own kind of class style or character style, because any character can really have really good face skills along with their other skills. I mean, you get a fair amount of skill points in this game if you really want to invest, and they're not hard to improve. So having a solid face character in the group is really, really handy. And the only other thing I can really mention is just there's a lot of other kind of narrative based roles that players could play. There are some hybrid, style characters. Very rarely, but you could have like a decker mage character, for instance, who has a lot of utility, can help in any situation. It's not as easy as that, but we'll get into all of that soon. So, keeping this all in mind, let's go ahead and talk about how you actually build the character. Now, I'm not going to get super in-depth into builds. I'm not knowledgeable enough to do so, but I'm going to go ahead and give some tips, what I find, for at least making characters. And in fact, I just ran my own group through a game, session 0 of making characters. So you can check out the session 0 for Jukebox Junkies here on the channel, where we I helped a bunch of people make characters. We were doing a lot of learning and all kinds of stuff. I'm a little bit more knowledgeable since then, but still, it's a complex system. So, you gotta forgive some of the crunch and some of my lack of knowledge of said crunch. But all right, let's get into the major factor, which is character priorities. Now, I'm going to show you here a table. This table is going to represent what your character build priorities are. Not the priorities of the character you're making, but how you're statting yourself out equivalently. Now, there's 5 categories, I believe, 5 categories when it comes to what your priorities are. and you have 5 ranks equivalently as to how much you get out of said category. The categories are sectioned into columns, and then on the left hand side of the, I'm sorry, it's gonna be on this side. On the left hand side of the column is A to E style of ranking. A is obviously really good. You get a lot out of it. For instance, for resources, you get a lot of money. But if you have E in resources, you get no money. See, I think we get what it means now. And you're going to pick, and you can't double up on any ranking. And it's not like math, you can't have like 2 C's and that you can't like fiddle with the numbers. You're going to have an A, a B, a C, a D, and an E. So, metatype. Metatype is your race, it's your style, it's your ancestry, it's your character, like are you an elf, dwarf, human, troll, orc, what have you. Each of the metatypes do have their own advantages to them, and this is evident by the fact that they come with an extra number in parentheses. That parentheses represents the number of special attribute points they get for investing in things called edge, magic, or resonance, depending on what your magic resonance priority is, but we'll get to that. So, the higher that number is, the more you can invest in it. Edge is generally good for all characters because one of the things Edge can really be used for is for, doing a lot of actions in combat with the initiative dice. You can use it for re-rolling. Combat-based characters want a lot of Edge, but all characters really want a lot of Edge. You also invest these points into your magic or resonance attributes as well. So if you're playing a mage-type character, it's probably something you're going to want to keep an eye on. Granted, you can also buy everything with karma, which we'll get to here in a little bit. So, metatype. Each of the metatypes come with their own special attributes. You can see here that you can't even pick a troll unless you have a C in the priority for metatype. So, just something to keep in mind if you want to play a metatype specifically. Next is going to be your attribute. It's just going to be the total number of attribute points you get. Each point is a 1-for-1 increase to an attribute up to a certain limit based on your metatype. So that's something you want to keep in mind as well. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Good attributes is good for everyone. Obviously, some characters don't need as many attributes. If you're playing a Decker, for instance, you're going to want a really good, logistics, or you're going to want a really good, willpower. So those ones are going to be the ones you're going to want to invest in. All right, next is going to be your magic or resonance priority. Now, this is actually really important because you can't even pick certain types of magic styles unless you have a high enough priority in it. For instance, unless you have a C or higher priority, you cannot pick the magician or technomancer style of play. And which means you can't be like a full caster build character. You need a C or higher, and you get more magic or resonance ratings that you can increase up to, as well as more skills and more spells in those categories. So it's very important to look at this table and understand what you really want. Magic and resonance-based characters obviously are going to want more attributes and more special attributes than other characters. And I'm kind of going to get into, don't worry, I'm going to actually get into what each kind of style of play will need priority-wise. So we'll get to that in just a bit, but let's finish out here. Skills. Now, the skills table was a little confusing to us. Obviously, the better your skill priority, the more skill points you have. Skill points increase at a 1-for-1 basis with a max skill of 6, unless you pick special qualities, which I'll get to in a bit. So, yeah, the higher the better. Now, there is a slash and then a second number next to all of these, but, only C and higher have actually a number next to those. That second number goes to skill groups. Skill groups are sets of 3 or 5 skills based on some kind of job or something like that that you improve all the skills in. And if you level one individual skill in that skill group, you'll break the skill group. So skill groups are more used to round your character off so that you have more accessibility to doing things not necessarily focused on your main tasks or goals. This is really good, and it makes very skill heavy character types like the rigger or the decker to kind of balance themselves out a little bit and keep alive, or at least have more ability to do what they need to do. And the last category is resources. Now, resources is actually pretty major. Some styles of play cost lots of new yen, which is this game's currency. New yen is something that you're going to want a lot of in general for all style of characters, but if you're playing the street samurai, rigger, decker, whatever, you're going to need a lot starting out, because a lot of, especially the rigger and the decker, well, you know what, even the street samurai, a lot of their initial stuff costs a lot of new yen. So what do you need? You're right. What do you need as the player in this situation? Now, again, this is not a video about builds. This is not a video about me describing everything in the game. I'm just going to give you the basics. It's up to you to research what you need for your character. I don't want to make a very long video because obviously people just want to kind of get right into it, and you're going to learn what you need to just by following what's in the book standardly. So let's talk about the roles I gave beforehand first. So magic and resonance, or I guess on this side, magic and resonance, technomancers and magicians, or magic adepts, or whatever. There's different styles of magic, and that's a whole nother video. Just know that all of them typically do need more magic skills, more spells, and more special attributes. And this is why when picking this one, you want to put it as high as you're comfortable with putting it. Now, the best magic characters don't necessarily even start off at like an A ranking. Now, obviously it sets you on the right course, and it's really handy to have, but you can go with a B and I think still be really good. And even if a C, if you're going for more of a hybrid build style character, maybe you're going like the street samurai with like some mystic adept, or some adept stuff. You don't even need mystic adept, some adept, enhancements, for instance. One of the important things to remember about magic and resonance, though, is they're tied to your essence, in the sense that every time you invest in some kind of tech that removes your essence, body augments, whether bio or pure cyber, they're going to remove your essence. And whenever you drop essence, you reduce your magic and resonance max attribute limit and current max attribute limit. So if you have a magic rating of 5 currently and you get 1 essence worth of augments, you are going to have 4 essence, and your max overall magic or resonance is going to be reduced by 1 as well. So it's something really important to understand when it comes to building your character, and that's why these characters don't typically need resources, but they really do need a meta type that fits exactly what they're going. So you're going to want to go magic resonance, meta type, then skills, attributes, resources. That would be how I would do it. It gives you enough. Skills are a little bit more important because obviously your main skills are very limited. Magic uses a lot of willpower or logic. I think actually technomancy does as well. So you only have 2 major attributes that you're really working with. You don't need a lot of attribute points for that. So I would put skills a little bit higher than attributes, but I think those 2 can be interchangeable based on your style of build. So moving on, the decker. Now the decker and the rigger are actually the same when it comes to what they want. You're going to want resources as your top priority. The more gadgets you have to work with, the better. Second, you're going to want your skills. Your skills are going to be your lifeblood when it comes to operating your devices, and it's going to be whatever is going to get you where you need to go. Following skills is attributes. Now, both of these classes have a good logistics and willpower requirements as well. So, you're going to want to keep an eye out on those things. Having a good attribute will really do you well. Then you want your meta type. Your meta type isn't super important, but having some edge does help. So having a C rank or D rank is not too bad. And then E can go to magic and resonance. Now you can play like a technomancer style rigger character. Don't go decker. Technomancer offers the same functionality that a deck provides, making having a deck obsolete. So don't worry about playing a decker technomancer. You're really shooting your foot if you're trying to go that way. But a technomancer rigger, on the other hand, has some actually pretty interesting additions to it that I would keep an eye out. So definitely resources, skills, attributes, meta type, magic. Yeah. I think that's all of them. So let's go ahead and talk about our final one, which is the Street Samurai. Street Samurai is a little bit of an odd one. It has a lot of floating priorities that can go in a lot of different ways. You want good skills because your weapon skills and weapon specialities. A speciality is essentially a more specific skill, but it adds to the skill parent. So, for instance, if you have pistols, for instance, and then you have a specialty in heavy pistols, you add those two together when you're rolling those skills. So having a lot of skill points for the specialties is really, really important. What's also important is having good attributes, because you need really good body, you need really good reactions and intuition, you need a really good agility, probably. You need really good strength. Attributes, I would probably mark as their highest requirement, followed by skills, and then what comes left kind of depends on you. Now, a lot of Street Samurai can get by with not a lot when it comes to weapons, but the better the weapons for you, the better your killing ability. So you're going to want to invest in weapons that really focus on what you're doing. And also, your weapons determine what your overall limit on successes are, which is called weapon accuracy. The higher your weapon accuracy, the more successes and thus the more damage you can do with your weapons. So having high resources is also pretty good. Your meta type is something that also can be good. You don't need a lot of it though. So I would put it probably on the lower end of your priority scale, but you can get more edge, which can be used for, a bunch of other things, as I mentioned before. Edge is really good, but you're probably going to be buying it mostly with karma anyway, which we'll get to in a bit. And last but not least, you're not going to need magic and resonance. Now, obviously, I did mention before that you can take the adept and do some Street Samurai stuff with that. That's all cool. Street Samurai, you got a lot of stats you really need to fill out. You want to make your attributes as high as possible, your skills as high as possible, and your weapons as accurate as possible. So those three would be the biggest priorities. But if you do want to do any kind of like adept stuff, magic stuff, or whatever, you kind of got to start off with some. So, that's up to you. You're going to be kneecapping yourself at the start for hopefully better games in the future. And so, yeah, that's it. Now, I didn't go into the meta types and what they offer you. Again, I'm not going into builds. What's better for what? That's up to you to decide how intensely you want to take the character or the game, what have you. There's just a few more things I want to talk about before we finish here. So the next part to talk about is going to be your qualities and then your karma. So qualities are like advantages and disadvantages for your character. A good quality is a boon your character has, while a negative quality is some kind of hindrance. A lot of words for saying good quality is good, negative quality is bad. Plain and simple. Now, you generate karma and you spend karma through qualities, and then you can actually spend karma after you're done with qualities to further increase your attributes, which is mentioned later in the character creation section. I'm not going to go into that here. Just know that having more karma is good. Now, you can never have more than 50 karma because you can only get 25 karma in negative qualities. And you can never spend more than 25 karma in positive qualities. So if you go full on both, full positive, full negative, you're going to be at 25 karma for your skills, attributes, whatever you need after the fact. So, do what's good, do what's comfortable. Like many games that offer these kind of systems, there's a lot of negative qualities I feel you can get away with without giving yourself too much of a hindrance. Personally, I like good negative qualities that actually hurt my character, gives me something to work around, doesn't make the game too easy, and overall, it just makes for a better story. But depending on how you want to play, I'm sure that there's tons of qualities out there, negative qualities, that you can pick up that are just very, very easy to get around. Now, one positive quality I really want to mention because it's really important, though you can get it after character creation, it's really good in character creation because then it can affect how high you can make a certain attribute. And that's going to be called aptitude. Now, attributes cannot get above 6 unless your race gives you that bonus. With aptitude, you can go above that by 1, and it increases your maximum, the overall end-all be-all, to 13, which means that you can go above what most, if not 99.999% of characters can get to. It's really important because if you want to start out with, as much advantage as you can starting out, aptitude is a really good quality to pick up. But not only that, it's something that you can want to keep in mind because you can only have one attribute at its max. So you want to pick carefully based on what you want to do, something to keep in mind for the future. Once you spend all your karma on positive or negative qualities, or I guess you get more karma depending on your negative qualities, then the rest is just buying your gear and buying out your stats that you have, some karma for. And something special as well, you can get contacts. Now, contacts is another thing altogether, and honestly, a lot of what a contact can offer is based on what your DM provides. Contacts are really good for your characters to get special information, access to illegal goods or whatever, and all characters start with a special karma limit of 3 times their charisma score in points they can put into their contacts. That's very important and something that you should know right out the gate. Now, karma, it can be used and should be used a lot for increasing your edge or your magic or resonance attributes, as those are very important and very helpful skills. Obviously, you can use these remaining karma points to round out a lot of your skills as well. And the table that they show in the book, I'm not going to show it here. Again, that's too crunchy for me to do in one video. This table here is going to be very helpful if you're kind of looking to round your character out, because it's not going to be 1-for-1 anymore like you've gotten with a lot of your other things in the game. Buying gear, there's a lot, so much so that I really can't go into it. All I gotta say is if you're playing a decker, get a good deck, and if you're playing a rigger, get drones or get a vehicle, because that's a lot of where your skills are going to be focused on anyway. And obviously, as I mentioned with Street Samurai, the better your weapon, the better its accuracy, the more damage you can deal. Also, you're going to want those juicy augments to make your stats even better, like reflex boosters and the like. So there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot that goes into the game, but this is the very basics. Once you have an idea, your DM will help you go through. There's also a wealth of videos online that can help provide information on what things you might do for the style of characters you want to play. All right, so you decided you want to run a Shadowrun 5th edition campaign. Now, whether you're an old DM or a new DM, I'm going to tell you this. Shadowrun 5th edition is a very crunchy system. It's got a very deep lore. I mean, obviously, it's up to its 6th edition right now. Actually, we're doing 5th edition because that was what was voted on. And also, 5th edition has gotten some of the best rapport with players. So that's why we're doing everything on 5th edition. And I'm assuming if you're running 5th edition since you're watching this video. But there are 6 editions. So obviously this game has a wealth of lore because every new edition added new lore, new everything. it can be very overwhelming, and especially if you're a newer GM, you're going to want to take it slow, and that's completely okay. I'm going to name here a few basics when it comes to starting your first campaign, and a recommendation from a very experienced GM. Take your time. Make a small term campaign. Let your players mess around with the game system, mess around with some character styles. Don't start off on a, epic level campaign right out the gate. You don't need to. Do a 10 to 15 session campaign. Something that's very short, easy to close out, something that's very easy to get your hands on and play with the system, so you don't implement any homebrew rules or you don't set up any premises that just kind of start hurting. It's something I've done a lot in a lot of my games as well. So I understand the feeling, and you want to go kind of balls to the wall with your game because you're excited to tell a really good narrative. Take your time. Do a short campaign or two first. Get an understanding for the game system, how the rules play. Once you get a good enough intuition for the game, then you can style your own campaign and you can run it to the best of your ability and give your players the experience that you want to deliver to them. That out of the way, how should you start your first game? Now, the general premise of Shadowrunners is you got your Shadowrunners, your players, and they're going to sneak in, break in, do something illegal to some corporation or some big businessman or something, and they're going to steal info. They're going to steal important information, show off, get some dirt on the individual, or maybe even like a kidnapping. There are gangs in this world as well, and they're very interesting. They're very flavorful. So you have a wide variety of small tasks. Honestly, my recommendation is have some like factory, some small time corporation that makes a good amount of money doing production or something like that. Have the boss be sleazy, have one of their employees pay the Shadowrunners to, get some dirt on them and make their lives better, do whatever. That is my recommendation for the first one. It's very nice and simple. It's a one building affair. You go in, you get the tech, you get out, or you break in, fight the guards, get the tech, get out. That kind of stuff. There's a lot you can do. And Shadowrun also offers a variety of other styles of gameplay as well. There's dealing with the gangers. There's kind of urban occultism and dealing with the supernatural, because that is a very big aspect of the world as well. Don't let the cyberpunk themes fool you. There is a very deep magic and occultic based system and lore to this game. So once you kind of get an idea of where you want to go, pick a place in the world. The core book offers a variety of the continents and kind of their current state when it comes to, the world of Shadowrunner. And then look at them, decide like, okay, this is kind of what runs in this area. And then you're going to pick one of the major 10 corporations, probably one that predominantly focuses on that continent, as most of them have like a primary area of focus, though, they're all widespread to major degrees. And just focus on one place, one city, one mega core, and you're good to go. That's all you need to learn for your lore, everything like that. You don't even need that for necessarily your first little mission here that I mentioned before. Like the one shot we're going to be running, which you can check out next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the channel. We'll be streaming on both Twitch and YouTube. We're going to be doing exactly that. The players are going to be going into a warehouse, a manufacturing plant, more like, for a, like prosthetic limbs and augments and everything like that. They make a lot of the small parts. They're not a big corporation or whatever. And they're getting dirt on the big guy who has like a black box thing in his office. And they're going to either sneak in, break in, and get out. And we're going to try to do that in a one shot. Probably won't get that far, but we're going to try out a lot of the systems there. So if you want to see how the game is actually run, check us out at that time. Then craft your first couple sessions and decide on, how your players might approach it. Are they going in quiet? Are they going in loud? That's all you need to do. Take this time to learn the game, to learn the systems, and then in your free time, read the lore for the area that you're going for, the city that you're going for, and about the major corporations. And then the rest just comes to learning by doing. You're going to play the game so that you learn how to run it for everyone else. I recommend you read as much of the book as you can manage. It's a 500-page book almost. So, you're not going to, it's going to take a bit of time to get through it all. And even I, with 2 weeks of reading it pretty straight through, am struggling to grasp everything. I have to run it, and I'm expecting everyone else is going to have to run it too. So, run the game, understand it, get, work out the kinks, then you can run your major adventure, but just get the basics, and it's as simple as most of what your Shadowrunners are going to be doing are going to be in the same city, because the cities are massive, and there's no end to corruption that they have to deal with, no end to enemies that they have to face off with, and the setting itself is incredibly interesting. So it's something I highly recommend you dive into and get fun out of it. Have some fun with your players. This is a very unique setting, and a lot has gone into it. And not only that, but this is kind of like the D&D 3.5 era of tabletop, where the systems are crunchier, but they had a lot of heart. They weren't very lucrative businesses, so there was not a lot of corruption going on. Just some people who absolutely loved tabletop and wanted to tell some really cool stories. And that's what I'm going to recommend everyone do, especially when it comes to Shadowrun, I should say, because it's a game that just oozes flavor. It oozes a sense of self-identity, and it's something that I would recommend anyone really take a look at to get the most out of. But with that, we're going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you all so much. This is a much longer video than I standardly make. Granted, this is kind of a video divided between players and the GM. So, obviously it's going to be a little bit longer of a video, but I didn't want to split it up into 2 videos. So I think this is good enough. Now, maybe that's not a good idea. I don't know. Maybe I could have done it all in one, or split it into 2 and got twice as many views. I don't know. YouTube's hard, but I hope it's helped. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and end it here. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. I hope you have a wonderful time with Shadowrun 5th edition. Come please check out our one shot. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you can see the system played there. And next week, I'll be giving my final thoughts on the system and what I like or dislike about it. So with that, farewell.